What's up, guys? We are back again looking at some rookie quarterback prospects. Last week in our first episode, we looked at the consensus top four quarterbacks that should go in the first round. And today we're going to talk about six more quarterbacks that I think should get drafted, as well as maybe even a couple others. But we're going to go through those guys today and kind of give our opinions about them and look at them from a dynasty point of view as well. As always, I'm joined by my father, Jeff. Dad, how you doing?
What's up, dirtbags?
What is up?
That means I love you when I call you a dirtbag.
Yeah, it's
Terms of endearment.
Exactly, a term of endearment. Yeah, so looking at we had the combine this last weekend finish up. It's currently March 9th, so the combine happened this last weekend. And anything from the combine there, Dad, that kind of changes anything about those top four quarterbacks? Did it change anything for you personally about how they performed?
I watched a lot of the combine workouts. I don't know. I must be sick in the head, watching guys running around in underwear doing stuff. But it's nice to hear. It's nice to hear the commentary. It was about 4 days of workouts: Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The quarterbacks. Wow, that was Saturday. And the other, so Bryce Young didn't work out. CJ Stroud, they said pretty much the Ohio State quarterback, kind of number 2 on most people's list, really looked smooth, and his throwing was really really good, really smooth, and just dropping dimes in there and stuff like that. And that's kind of the way he plays, kind of like nothing really looks hurried up or anything else. Will Levis did a good job. He from Kentucky, he's the bigger guy, and he can kind of whip the ball in there pretty good. And he looked the part. He did himself some favors and stuff like that. I think the one that knocked everybody off the charts a little bit was Anthony Richardson. I think everybody knew he's a very good athlete, but remember, he only started 13 games in his college career, but his workouts were crazy. I think he had the highest vertical jump of any quarterback. All of his, the broad jump and all this and all the other stuff was really, really off the charts. The 40-yard dash and stuff like that. And the throwing, man, he looked really good. He calls himself a combination of what did he say? Newton. So he's Cam Jackson or something like that. I guess he was calling a combination of Lamar Jackson and Cam Newton. But his throwing was really good. His footwork looked very good. So he just moved himself up the draft board. Somebody's going to be taking him. Whether he's going to be playing much next year, we don't know. But he looked he looked really good.
For sure. So, and yeah, we mentioned it that last week. Like you said, it was expected. It's always nice to see it, and basically testing out as the most athletic quarterback to ever test at the combine or something. Running in the, what was it, a 4.43 at 230 pounds is impressive. And yeah, definitely probably the biggest arm in the draft class.
Vertical jump was 41 inches or something. So he's a pretty big guy, 240 pounds, and jumping that high. And it's nice to hear these guys talk and hear their faces and stuff or see their faces and just hear them talk. And I've seen a couple things on NFL Network where the ex-49er coach Steve Mariucci dragged Richardson in and the guy from TCU, Max Duggan, and draw this play on the board and stuff like that. And it looked pretty good, and it doesn't look like it's set up too much, but I'm sure some of it is. But yeah. So those top four guys are still they're gonna go early, man. They're gonna go. I'd be
Yeah.
shocked if we get out of the top 10 and they're all four of those guys aren't gone. So
Yeah.
I'd be really shocked. But
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I don't think it changes too much for me personally in terms of the rankings. The only thing I guess it would change is if it changes the perspectives of the GMs and the coaches, then we have to kind of respect that when we coming to our dynasty rookie draft. If Richardson could possibly be taken number one overall, he could be the first quarterback taken overall, and we have to kind of respect that a bit. Not saying you have to agree with it, but you do have to respect the fact that he went number one overall. And yeah, at the end of this, I kind of want to quickly spend 5 minutes kind of looking at, you hear in the fantasy world, in real football as well, but especially in dynasty fantasy, you hear draft capital a lot, and where guys were drafted and what that means for like their long-term future, basically. And we're going to look a little bit at quarterbacks basically since 2012. And but anyways, we'll get to that at the end, and just looking at where are these top quarterbacks that are finishing in fantasy, where they were drafted. So but we'll get into looking at the next 6 quarterbacks that I think are all going to be taken in this year's draft. I think last year we had 9 quarterbacks, but it was kind of a weak quarterback draft. I think generally you get like 11 to 13 quarterbacks taken in the draft. Definitely in the double digits is more common than in the single digits. So we got 6 more guys that should be taken. And I think after those top 4 guys, the next tier is 2 guys, Tanner McKee from Stanford and Hendon Hooker from Tennessee. So I personally want to start with Hendon Hooker because I'm super, super excited about Hendon Hooker, watching his some of his film. And also Tennessee was a great team this year, and they were beating Alabama and undefeated pretty late in the season and had a really, really good team. And Hendon Hooker was a huge reason why. So, Dad, what did you think? Your impressions of Hendon Hooker?
Yeah, I remember last fall watching a few of those games, where he beat Alabama, and I said, this guy looks the part. And then unfortunately he tore his ACL in November. So
Something
but
to keep in mind, yeah.
yeah, something to keep in mind. But he is definitely, in my book, he is definitely the next quarterback, number 5. And I wouldn't have, as far as a dynasty fantasy football, I wouldn't have a problem drafting him with the
Oh, no,
understanding, with the understanding that you might not get much out of him next year, but
Mhm.
somebody's looking good. I did see a report last week, just reading the news that, I don't know if it was him, but he was saying he'll be ready for training camp. And, of course that's kind of pushing it a little bit, but he is a quarterback, so it's not like a wide receiver or a running back. He's some of the things I found out about him. You want me to continue on, Mike?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a little bit older. I get to hear him talk on XM radio. They interviewed him. He sounded very mature. And then I found out he's 25 years old. That's
Yeah.
pretty old,
And he'll be closer to 26 once the season starts.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and he's been around. He played a couple years at Virginia Tech,
Mhm.
and he started 16 games there, and then he was with Tennessee. And he's had 36 games starting.
Mhm.
Virginia Tech, Tennessee, big Power Five conference football. So he looks like he's got a good running ability. He can move around. Can even take off running once in a while. Big, strong guy, 6'4", 220. Got a very strong arm. So he definitely looks the part. And
Yeah.
he had a pretty good coach there at Tennessee. His name was Josh Heupel, who he used to be an Oklahoma quarterback. So this guy is, to me, the next one on the if I need a quarterback in fantasy and the other four are gone, I'd be thinking about this guy, no
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah. I mean, I'm even at the point, again, it's a lot of this is going to depend on where he goes in the actual NFL draft. But if he falls into the right situation, which, he can, because he's most likely not going to be a first half. There's a chance he's not a first rounder for sure. There's a chance he is, but he's not going to be in the top 15, 16, which sometimes is better for these guys, because then you generally, if you're being drafted at the end of a round, you're going to a better team. What if he gets drafted by Tampa Bay, or a team like, I don't know, another team like, trying to think of someone else who has a high second round pick, but one of these teams that are kind of, they have players there. They have Evans and Godwin. They have a solid defense and, a run game, and he gets put on there. And I don't know. I'm super excited about him, and I think he could kind of follow the path of like a Jalen Hurts. Not saying they're similar players necessarily, but just in terms of, drafted second round, to a good team, and he takes over in that second year. And look at Jalen Hurts now. And these are the type of quarterbacks from a fantasy perspective that he can run. And that's kind of, again, the cheat code of fantasy, the cheat code that everyone knows now of fantasy quarterbacks is you can get some rushing production from them. Those guys are golden. So I really, really like Hendon Hooker. I hope he goes to a good team. When I was looking at a lot of people talking about the weaknesses of him, the top three things that were consistently mentioned were all kind of things out of his control. It was the ACL. Okay, he got hurt. It was his age, which, he can't really control. He is old. Like we said, he's going to be closer to 26 when the NFL season starts in 2023, which is, generally people like younger prospects because you can get them for longer. He's older than Jalen Hurts and Justin Herbert, and they're going into their second contracts. So just kind of keeping that in perspective. But yeah, his injury, his age, and then the offense he played in is, kind of gimmicky in the sense, not gimmicky, but it inflates quarterbacks that just
Yeah,
how
it's
they run
made.
their offense.
Yeah, it's made for quarterbacks.
Yeah, yeah.
Made,
But
made, yeah, for padding stats
yeah,
and stuff like that. So
but all those things like he can't control, right? It was not a lot of things about like his ability to throw the ball and, and any of that. He has a good arm. It's not, Anthony Richardson good, but he has a really nice deep ball. He's improved basically every year that he's been a starter. He's started almost 40 games in college, good size. So yeah, super excited. I
he
think he
threw.
can. What's
Yeah,
that?
he threw the ball down the field quite a bit.
Lots. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot. So there was no dinking and dunking to backs or stuff like that. They were getting the ball down the field.
Yeah, his average depth of target was 11.5 yards, which is really high. If you're in the double digits, that's pretty high.
That's super high. Yeah.
Yeah. So didn't turn the ball over a lot. He had just over 1% of his throws were considered turnover worthy, which is nice to see. And yeah, again, I think it's showing, but just super excited about him. And like I could see him being behind Richardson and Bryce Young, the third most productive fantasy quarterback, not necessarily the third best quarterback in the draft, but for fantasy purposes, I could see him being, 2 or 3 out of this draft class. So
Yeah, I agree. So
Yeah, the one thing to do,
Yeah.
keep in mind is the talent. He did have some talent around him, potential first round receiver, second round tackle, and that's another receiver that should be taken in the third or fourth round. So he did definitely have some talent there.
Yeah, I think last year he had over 400 yards rushing, and the year before that it was over 600 yards rushing, which is quite a bit.
Yeah,
Because
maybe. Yeah, go ahead.
when they in college football they count sacks as minus rushing yards. So
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, maybe interesting stat I heard about him, and then we can kind of move on. Is maybe he does look to run a little bit too much in that they said he only had 5 completions whenever he was moved off of his drop back. So when he gets that pressure and he's moving to the right or left, he's basically looking to run the ball. He's not looking to pass it. So something you want to maybe cut down a bit on in the NFL. You don't want to run too much, and definitely don't want to take on too much contact. But overall, yeah, super excited for him. Do you think he would, if he goes to the right team? I don't have that team necessarily for you, but let's say he gets drafted in the late first or mid second round to the right team, would you take him potentially in dynasty rookie drafts in the first round, like at the end of the first round, 9th, 10th pick or something? If he's sitting there and you need a quarterback?
yeah, I don't think, again, with the understanding that you might not get much out of them, but with these quarterbacks in dynasty, you're gonna have to keep on stocking up on guys.
Mhm.
So you can't ignore it and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
and you might get a Brock Purdy situation, or all of a sudden he's playing there in November and
yeah,
stuff like that. So
yeah.
there's some teams that we'll have to see how free agency when it starts next week, how that pans out. But I feel there's a team or two that they're going to have to draft rookie quarterbacks, and somebody's going to have to be, there's some guys that are going to be playing
Mhm.
this fall, and rookie quarterbacks and stuff like that. So
Yeah, and even you even have a couple good teams with quarterbacks. I think of like the Lions and the Seahawks. Maybe in that second round, if Hendon Hooker's there, where they don't need him for the next year or two, but then he can kind of take over for them after Goff or Geno Smith move on. So oh, it'll be interesting. I'm really, really curious to see where he'll go. Everyone, they said during the interviews, like he was the leader. He spoke, interviewed well, and kind of probably blew a lot of people away in the interview. So that's said something as well. The quarterback,
yeah,
you kind of need to be a leader.
yeah, like I said, he sounded very mature and stuff like that. So he's
Yeah,
definitely he's ready for the next level.
yeah, yeah. He's definitely the next quarterback after those top 4 for me. And I'd say the next guy is in that tier of guys that could go, day 2 is Hendon Hooker, and then Tanner McKee from Stanford. And I'll start with him. And for me, it was really hard to kind of analyze him. I feel like I need to go back and watch even more games because that Stanford team was really, really bad, like god
They're
awful.
horrible.
Their offensive line was the 8th lowest pass blocking offensive line in the Power 5. And that's what, 120 teams, or how much is the Power 5? It's a lot of teams, right? The top
Yeah.
5 conferences. So maybe you're looking at more like 60, 70 teams, but yeah, they're in the bottom, they're the 8th lowest, and you could just see it. You just watch it, and it wasn't like, oh, he had pressure, but he had time to move. It was like pressure stat, like down, like he could do nothing a lot of time. So he's kind of a throwback of that throwback, meaning he's a pocket passer, not a big athletic guy. Not going to run a lot. He can move a little bit, but he's not known for that. And that's just a terrible combination of a terrible offensive line with a pocket passer. really, really bad. No one around him, no skill position players are projected to be drafted in the top 4 rounds. And it was just really hard for me to analyze him. I didn't see much on the tape, but I don't know how much that is, or just how bad the team was around him. You know, he did seem pretty accurate. And another interesting stat that I found was half his throws going more than 10 yards were considered tight window passes, meaning his receivers just like weren't getting open when he was throwing down the field. He had to throw it into tight windows. So I don't know. What do you think about Tanner McKee when you were watching the tape, Ed?
Yeah, I kind of echo all those thoughts. I was like, all right, first off, he's a big guy,
Yep.
6'6", 230, so that's a good quarterback height and weight and stuff like that. Boy, just last year he got sacked 40 times.
It was bad.
So he just, you know, in the videos that I watched, you know, of game tape, and you could tell he didn't look comfortable. And there's and a lot of I don't want to call it dinking or dunking, but you know, there wasn't really a lot of downfield stuff, you know, in his game.
For
That's not
reference,
just, yeah.
just to echo, or just to mention something about that, we talked about Hendon Hooker, 11.5 yards average depth of target. Tanner McKee was 7.8, so huge difference. But anyways, continue.
Yeah, he's definitely a pocket passer. You know, he can slightly move around just a little bit, but if you expect him to take off and run and you know, like an Anthony Richardson or something like that, that ain't happening. So he's 23 years old. He started 2 years at Stanford, and boy, the Stanford team really stunk. You know, I think they won 3 games this year, or you know, and then 4 games last year or something. But they, you know, so this guy was getting his brains beat in pretty much in the college football Pac-10, Pac-12 game. So he's yeah, you know, just in my idea, he's the later half of a dynasty draft, I guess. So because I'm not sure where he fits.
Yeah, I think if he can get to the right team, and a lot of people are projecting him to be a day 2 guy, which is 2nd or 3rd round guy. You know, even higher, a lot of the people have him ranked over Hendon Hooker. You know, like PFF is one of those where he's their 5th quarterback after the top 4 guys. And this just comes from, you know, again, we're not professional scouts or anything. So there has to be something there that people are seeing to have him ranked here. Maybe it's the accuracy. We talked about he was really, really accurate, and you know, he's thrown into tight windows because the receivers can't create separation. And you talk about getting sacked and stuff, and that doesn't just affect you on the plays that you're sacked. That's in your head, you know, like that has to affect how you perform. Knowing,
yeah, like I got to get the ball out, or I'm
Yeah.
tired of getting my head knocked in, and you know, all of that.
Yeah. So, you know, there has to be some stuff. It's just, for me in the NFL now, it's just it seems like you gotta be a mobile quarterback, you know, not necessarily run all the time, but just being able to move and create. You gotta be able to like create plays by moving with your legs. You know, it doesn't have to be a runner, like you don't have to be Lamar Jackson or Jalen Hurts or Josh Allen. But just to be able to move around like a Mahomes, you know, he's not a runner, but he can use his legs to just create plays. So again, it's going to come down to, you know, we'll watch the more stuff on him, but it's going to come down to where he's drafted. If he falls to Tampa Bay and they take him in the 2nd round, like we kind of have to respect that. And like when we're drafting in Dynasty, and we have to keep that in mind, that's a good landing spot for him, and that 2nd round draft capital, which is really, really good for a quarterback. So yeah, interesting case study here. Just the guy not having anyone on his team to help him. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But those are definitely the next tier of guys, and then we start kind of getting into the later tiers, and these are probably mostly day 3 draft guys. 4, 5, 6, 7 round guys, which it's obviously a lot less of a chance to make an impact fantasy wise. But you never know. So I guess we'll go to Clayton 2 next. From Houston. He's a 4-year starter. I think he set the record of something like the most passing yards, or he set some record with passing last year. Because Houston just throws the ball like crazy. 44 start, which is something you like, Dad. He had over 40 starts, good size. He did have a receiver that's projected to go in the 2nd round. He's another guy that we're going to get a lot of these because of COVID. He's going to be closer to 25 when the season starts. But what did you think about Clayton Tune?
Yeah, he had like 550 yards rushing, so that was kind of impressive. He didn't necessarily get sacked a lot, so he was doing the problem was he was the leading rusher on the team, but all of his other numbers, good completion percentage, 67%, and the rushing and team wasn't bad. He's 6'3", 220, good physical numbers, 23 years old. Like you said, Mike, he's a 4-year starter, which helps. I mean, that's a lot of games under your belt. I mean, everything else was just kind of okay.
Yeah, didn't jump out, right? Nothing
No,
jumped out.
nothing. Yeah, I'm not saying he's a bad quarterback, but there's all sorts of guys who have gone to the next level, who are in positions like this. They get better, they get better coaching, they figure some things out, they mature, mentally and physically. They're professional athletes now, and then they get that ability. I can think of kind of going back a few years, Matt Schaub. There was somebody who wasn't highly thought of, and then he had a half a season that was worth a crap, and I think he ended up on the Texans. But nothing thrilled me about Clayton Tune. To me, in a dynasty, I know we do 4 rounds. Other people might do more. He's in the later. To me, he's in the later rounds.
Yeah, you can see the talent there, and there's talent and potential. It's just like you talked about. He can run. He can move. And in college, he did their team's leading rusher and 500+ yards. But it just feels like that he maybe ran a little bit too much, and that his running ability is not going to translate as well to the NFL. It feels like he's not as big as Josh Allen, not as fast as like a Lamar, and like you kind of need one of those, I would say, to be a pretty skilled runner, or to rely on your legs as like a weapon.
I'm not sure what his 40 time was. If
I can pull that up.
That's available.
Yeah, I'll pull that up. But yeah, it just didn't.
Yeah, and I agree with you. It doesn't. All the rushing yards. Okay, his 40 time is 4.6, and that's actually not bad.
Yeah,
4.64.
And yeah, I can see him scrambling out of plays and stuff, but designing runs for him, I just don't know if his running style is going to translate to the NFL to be able to do a Jalen Hurts or Josh Allen or Lamar, where literally your legs are part of the game plan, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, 4.6 is not bad.
We can say definitely he's more mobile than Philip Rivers. So
Yeah, not saying much there, but
no.
yeah. One thing I have been looking at a little bit more is like anticipation and just, being able to throw the ball before your receivers are coming out of their break of their routes. And it seems like he kind of lacked that a little bit. It kind of stared down his receiver a little bit too much. And there was a lack of anticipation there, which I think is something you really is like necessary in the NFL. Is you can't wait until your receivers already run their route. You have to throw it before they finish running their routes. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see where he goes. Personally, I feel like I from not being a professional scout or anything, seem like I like him more than Tanner McKee. Me personally, but most of the the talking heads and most people who do this more for a living don't have it ranked that way. There are a couple, but he seems interesting, an interesting prospect.
I definitely would say you're pretty right on. I can't say which one would be ahead of another. We do know Stanford had a pretty rough team. So, Tanner McKee, it was trying to do it all.
Yeah.
And, Houston played little lesser competition, not saying they were bad. They have
a
but
receiver
anyway,
who's going to be he's going to be an NFL. I really like the receiver from Houston, Dell. But yeah, and that's why, we said last week, and I'll kind of keep saying it, of quarterbacks are the hardest position to scout, and you have to trust where they get drafted at. So if he gets drafted in like the second or third round, we have to respect that, and that's going to boost them up in dynasty drafts. Whether or not we like them personally, we can't let a guy who's being drafted early in the second round fall very far in dynasty superflex, because that could be a real starter, So yeah, anything else about Clayton Tune, or should we move on?
Let's move on.
We got three more guys, right? Three more guys.
Yeah.
Jake Haener is the next guy from Fresno State. Yeah, I remember Haener from, I think it was in 2021 against UCLA. It was just like an epic win against UCLA, where he like got hurt and came back, and just like it was a shootout, and it was just a crazy game. But yeah, tell me what you think about Haener from Fresno State.
Yeah, not much, to tell you the truth. He's a senior. He's kind of an average arm. He's got good accuracy. I know that. Some of his physical stuff are not wonderful. He's like 6'1", 195. So watch some of his tape on Fresno State in the WAC conference and stuff like that. It was like, yeah, okay. So nothing thrilled me. I don't know. I'm not sure where he's going to end up. And
yeah, you see a lot of projections with him, like sixth rounder, as high as a fourth rounder, and it seems like if you had to put money on it, you're putting your money on a backup quarterback in the NFL, which is super valuable for an NFL team, not as valuable for fantasy, which is what what our goal is to talk about. Yeah, not the biggest guy. He reminded me of Heineke when I was watching him. Like a very similar size, mobile guy. Not the best arm, but like he can make throws, and apparently he's really good, like pre-snap, and good like just IQ in general, football IQ, good anticipation. But he lacks the arm to kind of make all the throws that you're going to need to make to be a winner, a consistent starter in the NFL. not a whole lot of talent around him at Fresno State. A couple skill position players probably be drafted in the later day 3 guys, but my prediction for him is that because everyone talks about how he's gutsy and he's just like a leader, and he's kind of like he was a kind of like a giant or dragon slayer at Fresno State, where they beat some of the bigger, like a UCLA in 2021. They beat some of the bigger teams, upset them. And my prediction is that he's gonna, in the next 2-3 years, he's gonna come in and replace the starter because of an injury, and he's gonna play really well for a few games, and people are gonna be like, oh, he should be our quarterback type of guy. Like,
It'll be a mad scramble on to pick him up for your fantasy team or something like that. So
yeah, it'll be like a Minshew or all that, even like I said, a Heineke, where it's like, yeah, they come in and, oh yeah, this guy's winning games,
I
like,
never heard of this guy before, but
yeah, but they're winning, right? Washington was winning last year with Heineke, but you kind of know your ceiling with them, and we're kind of getting to the point of probably not going to be drafted in dynasty drafts for the most part, I'd say. It's possible. It depends on where he goes, but I would be. We're kind of getting to that point, right, where it's maybe these guys are not going to be. They're going to be waiver wire ads if they become starters. Really good under pressure. He had over 55% completion percentage under pressure, which is really good. But yeah, anything else you want to say?
Just like I said, he was an accurate passer.
Mhm.
Just kind of an average arm, and he didn't look horrible, but nothing jumped out to excite me or anything else. So
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll move on to the next guy, and that is Aiden O'Connell, and he played at Purdue. I've heard some people hyping him up a little bit about maybe a potential sleeper in those day 3 guys of potential Brock Purdy. Not comparing them, but saying having that impact of where did this guy come from? Like he's on the right team type of thing. So, what did you think about Aiden O'Connell?
well, he comes from Purdue, so he's a Big Ten quarterback. His coach, while he was there, was an ex-quarterback. His name is Jeff Brom, who's moved on to Louisville now. And I think he had kind of a cup of coffee in the NFL, but he was a pretty relevant college football player. So his head coach probably had a lot of influence over Aiden O'Connell, and he I think, let me see. I'm looking. Oh, he's 25 years old. That's a little older, that's not a bad thing. That kind of means, a little more mature and stuff. And he's started quite a few games. He's got like 4 years worth of stats, and two of those years it looked like he was the primary starter, and there were some other games that he played. So he's definitely been playing, for those 4 years. I watched him play. I watched Big Ten football, so I've seen him play, and he my word, he's very accurate. In his junior year, he was over 70%, and Purdue did have some NFL caliber receivers, and he looks pretty good. I can't say anything bad to me on all the guys. He'd be after Hendon Hooker and maybe McKee. I wouldn't have a problem maybe drafting this guy. He's not,
where he goes.
he's not sexy or anything like that, or there's no he's a pure pocket passer. So there's no running. There's no running. I mean, his mobility is limited within the pocket.
Yeah.
But if you expect him to bust off a run, 15 to 20 yards, that's not happening. So, but his his arm, he looks okay. So I can see him ending up on a NFL team, as a
Oh, yeah.
backup somewhere.
Oh, for sure.
Backups
Yeah.
make good careers, by the way.
Yeah, and they're super important. I mean, especially if you're like, I don't know, if you're the Ravens and you have Lamar Jackson, your backup quarterback is very important, or some of these guys, like, what was it? Was it in the playoffs with the Chiefs where Chad Henne came in, or was it the weeks end of the year, week 17 or something? But Henne
Yeah,
came
where he got
in
his
and
yeah, where
yeah,
what's his face sprained his ankle and
yeah, Mahomes hurt his ankle and Henne had a 90+ yard drive, which was the difference in the game. And you know, these guys are important for sure. They're just, for fantasy purposes, we don't really care about them until they become the starter. But yeah, I can see him being drafted and definitely as a pocket passer, but he can move. He's not going to run a lot, but he can move out of the pocket, and he tends to stare down his targets a little bit too much, I think, which was something I found that people were saying is a weakness. So again, it's hard to say, yeah, you should draft him in Dynasty. We'll kind of have to come back to that once the NFL draft happens. But he's definitely a lot of people's sleeper quarterback, as a guy that could be, Brock Purdy like production for maybe this coming year. Just looking at any stats that I want to mention. No, I think we're good to move on. The last guy on our list is Dorian Thompson-Robinson from UCLA. Guy's been there for a long time. I think he had like
5 years.
Almost 50 games started. Yeah. And he was kind of a big deal when he came out.
Yeah, and I remember, I don't follow UCLA football, but living in Southern California, I watch. They're usually on the later Saturday night games, and I remember turning them on this year, and I'm going, "What am I watching? A replay of last year? This guy's still playing." So yeah, he was there 5 years, and he was actually at the combine last weekend. He's not a very big guy.
Mhm.
He's 6'2", 200, which is okay, and he has very good mobility. In this past year, he ran for over 650 yards.
Yeah.
But his head coach is Chip Kelly, who, they say he runs a very quarterback friendly offense. So,
Mhm.
but I always like the way he plays. He looks great for a while, and then he makes a dumb shit play here and there. And UCLA had a pretty good year this year. They knocked off some of the bigger teams, and they lost a couple games mid-season, and they were undefeated for a while, and they kind of fell out of the picture. So at the combine, he looked, some of his throws, they looked pretty good. I think his numbers for like running like 4.5, he's
He's definitely an elite runner, special runner. But as a quarterback, I just don't know if it's gonna work in the NFL. It kind of sucks because you almost wish like there has to be a place for guys like these where, maybe they're not going to be quarterback, but they obviously have talent, like where can they fit in? You can fit in somewhere, like maybe if a team gets creative and or if every team starts getting a Taysom Hill like on their team. I know they're very different, but just using a guy like that is a threat to throw it, can run it, and I wanted to look at him just because of his running ability, but yeah, you're right. He just makes too many mistakes.
You know who he reminded me of slightly is the backup quarterback for the Ravens.
Huntley.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He kind of reminded me of him a little bit, and I don't really know his background. I heard he might be moving on to another team, but so I could see, they call him DTR, Dorian Thompson Robinson. I could see him ended up being a player like that, and he's played a lot of football. I mean,
almost 50 games.
He's seen a lot of things. So again, a good coach, the right system, the right team. The guy could could be looking pretty good. We'll definitely see all these guys playing in August in the preseason.
Oh yeah, for sure. And maybe a team like the Ravens, they seem to their backup quarterbacks seem to fit the mold of Lamar Jackson. They had RG3 and then Tyler Huntley, and they want to basically, if Lamar goes down, they want to have a similar quarterback that runs a similar style and not completely change the offense. So could go to a team and maybe they get creative with them and use them Taysom Hill like and make some plays for them. And fantasy wise, though, I don't really see him being drafted in Dynasty draft. And but who knows? Hopefully I'm wrong, because he's fun to watch, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And even after this list, like there's even more guys like Stetson Bennett who has a good chance of. He had a really good combine apparently, and there's a chance that he gets drafted. And it's always interesting to say, yeah, he has the pedigree of he won 2 national championships. And, he has to be good at something to do that, right? So
yeah, there's a guy out of BYU.
Yes.
Jaron Hall.
Yeah.
That I'm not overly familiar with. The guy from the TCU quarterback, Max Duggan, I mean, he didn't really show up until the last year, and he had a good interview. He got pulled into the Steve Mariucci draw the play on the board and type stuff, and he was not even starting at the beginning of the year, and then the guy got hurt, but he looked pretty good. So there's a couple other guys too, like you said.
Willie Cunningham from Louisville, and he was, he ran for over 1,000 yards in 2021. They're talking about him being drafted. So there's going to be a lot of guys drafted, and when they get drafted, we're going to have to kind of reevaluate, okay, where do they fit into the Dynasty rookie draft world? Because these quarterbacks are valuable, for sure.
They're going to end up in the XFL or the USFL.
Yeah.
Which isn't bad. I mean, that means you're still playing.
Yeah, definitely.
Getting better,
So you talked about 6 guys here. Hendon Hooker is both of in this group is definitely at the top. I think in his own tier for me, separated from the other guys. Did he potentially break into even those, like he should be closer to the top 4 guys for you personally? What do you think as of now?
Well,
with Hendon Hooker,
I think of maybe not breaking that top 4. Those guys seem pretty solid, but I do see like Hendon Hooker, depending on the team status, you start drafting, you're in your draft pick 25 or 28 or 30. Do you need a quarterback? Or are you going to need a quarterback in a year or 2? Hey, draft him then. So, when you draft, remember, when you draft them in the first round, you have control over them for 5 years, for contract wise. So, or, very early in the second round or something like that. So,
Yeah.
I definitely see that.
So here's I'm just looking at this is a 3-round mock draft, and they have, this is Tankathon, so this is Hendon Hooker going in the 3rd round to the Saints, very early in the 3rd round to the Saints. How would that affect how you draft him in Dynasty draft? Do you think he has to be taken somewhere in the 2nd round, or what do you think?
Boy, yeah, I guess I would have to evaluate where he's taken. Like you said, 3rd round Saints. Derek Carr was just signed there. Derek Carr is probably going to get at least 2 years or something like that. So I don't know. Hendon Hooker Dynasty draft, probably 3rd round in that scenario.
Okay. So then next on your list, I think you said Clayton Tune, or was it Aiden O'Connell for you?
I like the Purdue guy,
Yeah,
O'Connell. That I would take. I would take O'Connell, followed by Tanner McKee, I think.
Okay. So in this 3-round draft, I don't know when this was updated or done, but it was updated 4 days ago. O'Connell wasn't in the top 3. McKee was taken in the 2nd round by the Lions. How would that change where you draft him in Dynasty if that were to happen? 2nd round to the Lions.
Yeah.
Would you take
4th
him?
round Dynasty.
Yeah.
I don't think. Yeah.
That's more because of how you feel about McKee, or
No, probably just knowing, Jared Goff's going to be there for 2 years. I don't see this guy. I don't see this guy overtaking Jared Goff. I don't see, if Jared Goff plays like he did the last year, and let's say he plays that well this year, he's going to get a contract extension. So, I mean, Jared Goff was, number 1-1. So,
yeah,
unless he starts looking like shit,
yeah.
But speaking of the Lions, they need big time need a backup quarterback. So
Yeah, this is maybe the time to take it. I don't know.
yeah,
Yeah, I think I would probably go definitely Hooker, and then I think Clayton Tune, and then McKee, and then probably O'Connell, and then Hayner, and then Dorian Thompson Robinson out of these 10 or these 6
Yeah.
that we just talked about.
yeah, I think Hayner would be my last guy, and Dorian Thompson Robin DTR. Geez, I might even bump him up. Well, I don't know. Clayton Tune. Well, I don't know. I like
It's tough.
DTR because he can run.
Yeah,
But
has
I
to
don't
go to
know.
the right team for sure. You got to go to the
Yeah,
right team.
if you're in a dynasty draft and those guys are last, you better evaluate who you're taking or what you're doing. So just take a look at them. Do your homework.
No, for sure, and it's all going to change when the draft comes around. And
Yeah.
last thought, like I think with Tanner McKee, it's going to be maybe the most important where he lands out of like any of these maybe top 6, 7 quarterbacks that we talked about. The top 4 and Bryce Young and Richardson and Levis and Stroud, and then Hooker. To McKee is the one where like he needs to go to the right team. It feels like whereas maybe a Hendon Hooker, he can kind of go to whatever system and he can make it. They can make it fit. Whereas with McKee, he's really going to need to go to the right team. And I don't know. I kind of like the Lions. I know you're not going to be starting for probably 2 years, but I like potentially a fit for the Lions there, especially in the 2nd round.
Yeah.
But to kind of wrap things up, we're getting close to an hour. So I went back and looked. We always talk about draft capital, and you'll hear it all the time in Dynasty of how important it is of where these guys are drafted. So I went back and looked from 2012 up until last year, so 11 seasons. I looked at the top 20 quarterbacks each fantasy year of total points. And I looked at where they were drafted in the real NFL draft. And it was out of those, so it's 220 top 20 in the top 20 for 11 years. 37 came from fourth round or later, including undrafted. So that's less than 17% of the 220 was drafted fourth round or later. And a large chunk of that is obviously Tom Brady, Kirk Cousins, and Dak. Those three guys, they made up for like 24 of those 37 top 20 finishes. So basically what that comes down to is if you take those guys out, those three guys, there hasn't been a quarterback to put up a top 20 quarterback season, which isn't even that crazy, right? Top 20 is like, we're talking super flex, like you want your quarterback, your second quarterback at least to be in that top 20.
Absolutely.
It's just so heavy, and it seems obvious, right? But when you actually put it down to numbers of like, wow, like 13 quarterbacks, not named Cousins, Dak, or Brady, that were drafted fourth round or later had a top 20 season in 11 seasons. Like that's kind of crazy. That it's very, very low, very low.
So not that many of them, right?
No, not that many. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
So,
there's only 9 quarterbacks drafted in the fourth round or later that have had a top 20 season in fantasy. Only 9 since 2012. Out of two, yeah, go ahead.
I thought there was I'm trying to go back on my memory a little bit, and this past season, I thought it was quarterbacks, and it was like a ridiculous amount of quarterbacks that started though, like
oh yeah,
well over 70, like
yeah.
75, 73, 79. It was just like a record year for quarterbacks. So that kind of tells you, injuries and all that stuff. So if you played fantasy football any number of years, we've all kind of been left holding the bag. Our quarterback got hurt and we're scrambling for somebody else. So
yeah, and it's just, but yeah, to see that number of less than 17%, just the drop off from basically, if you're not drafted in the top 3 rounds, there's a very, very small chance you're going to be a top 20 guy. Maybe you'll have a season or two. So the guys are Kirk Cousins, Dak Prescott, Tom Brady. We have Tyrod Taylor.
Kirk Cousins wasn't drafted. He was like number 4, I thought.
Yeah, fourth round. Him
and
Dak.
And was Dak a 3rd or 4th?
Fourth rounder.
Okay, and then Brady was a 6th. So
yeah. Brady and Tyrod were 6th.
Who?
Brady and Tyrod Taylor were 6th. Ryan Fitzpatrick and Gardner Minshew were 7th rounders, and then Case Keenum, Romo, and Heineke undrafted.
Yeah. About Brock Purdy, he was just 7th rounder this year.
Yeah, he didn't make it in that top 20 just because he didn't play enough games. But there's always going to be guys, but very few guys outside of those Cousins, Dak, and Brady. It was, Tyrod Taylor had a season here and there, and Fitzpatrick had a season here and there, and Keenum had his 2 seasons, one here and one. It was nothing consistent. So yeah, it's just that's how important draft capital is. You're going to see that with every position, not just quarterbacks. So that's why we say like Clayton Tune looks good. Like you can see the talent, and then he gets drafted in the 5th round. And it's like, well, that puts a damper on how you feel about him. Like, because now his chance for succeeding as a fantasy quarterback are very, very low for more than a year or two, maybe. So, all right. Anything? Any last comments or about these quarterbacks? And
No,
we're gonna move on to
what's
new
the
position.
preview for next week? What are we
next week.
doing?
Next week we're gonna do receivers. We're gonna do receivers next week. So we'll probably do. I'll have to see how many receivers are gonna be, but we'll probably do like 7 or 8 one week, and then the week after that another, or maybe 10. I don't know. Maybe we'll look at 20 or 15. We'll see how many are kind of projected to go.
Okay,
And we'll kind of split it up into two different weeks. But yeah, we'll look at receivers. Not stacked this year, but I think there's a lot of it's not top heavy like it has been the last couple of years, but I think there's still a lot of talent, and that you're gonna find in the late first, second, third round. So looking forward to that.
absolutely.
All right, well, we'll wrap it up there. Thanks for listening.